Servus YouTube, Chef here. This is part 2, the advanced guide for Wolcen. If you're new to the game, I recommend watching my beginner guide first. Content covered in this guide will be attribute scaling, character details where I go in depth of damage calculations, survivability stats, resistance types, ailments and resources, items and their scalings, different skills, types and calculations, and passives where I give my thoughts to the best and worst passive nodes and also their scaling. Timestamps below to skip ahead to different sections. Attributes. First of all, I briefly touched this in my beginner guide. Depending on which attribute is your highest, you will receive a damage buff. This increase is global. It will increase attack from weapons and any damage added from other gear, including spell damage. The exact numbers are as follows. Primary gives 0.5% per point, the second highest 0.4, the third 0.3 and the fourth 0.2. So stacking the primary attribute gives you the most damage. For example, 210 in ferocity increases our damage by 95%, and splitting it in ferocity and toughness only gives us 85.5. So knowing this, if we pick up nodes on the passive tree that are our primary resource, we can increase our damage by 12.5%. In addition to bonus damage, we also gain score in the respective areas. The game takes score and calculates with that your percent amount. The higher the score, the less percent you get for each point. I have tested out every attribute with score increases to see when it starts to fall off. On the left here is our score, after that the crit chance we get from that score, and then the net gain once we increase the score. Our base crit chance is 5%, so the first few points in crit chance score will gain us nothing. This can also not be reduced below 5%. As you can see, the first 300 crit chance score give us 27% crit chance, and the next 300 14%. So crit chance score is the most valuable until 30%. I will post my numbers on our Discord if you're interested. Next up, toughness. Health is not a score, it is flat. It will increase your health exactly by this number and not fall off. To be tanky, you're looking for damage reduction from the all resistance score. First 1000 resistance score gives you 50% damage reduction. The next 1000 give you 16%, so the sweet spot for all res is around 1500. As a side note, something is broken on the health. If you start to add toughness, the health will go up. And once you confirm, die, add or remove gear, it will go back to normal. Attributes are still effective even if not confirmed, so what you can do is add 1 point in toughness, take it off again, and then put everything in ferocity and you will gain more health. Next up, agility. We have a base of 2.4% dodge chance and 0% attack speed bonus. Dodge chance gains more percent per score than all resistance because it's harder to come by. I'm gonna talk about which skills are affected from attack and spellcast speed in the skill section. The net gain per score are the same for dodge chance and attack speed. The first 1000 points give you the most, after that it seems to fall off. The last one, ailment. Resilience is for negating status effects on yourself and ailment chance is for applying it to enemies. The net gains are the same for both scores. It has the exact same scaling as crit chance score. Character details. Combat average damage is calculated with the middle value of the damage range times your attack speed, crit damage and crit chance. Bonus to attack speed affects basic attacks and skills. The base speed of your attacks depends on your weapon you're using, but it does not affect skills. Slowest basic attacks are 200 weapons. 100 weapons dual wielding and staffs have the same base attack speed. 100 pistols and bows have the same attack speed, and the highest is dual wielding pistols. Crit chance depends on your score. All crit chance increases go on to score. The base crit chance is always 5%, no matter the score. There's the unique shield legacy of the Willbreaker and the passive Retaliator that will have your crit chance, not your score, your actual crit chance. And if you have the shield equipped and the passive selected, it will reduce your crit chance by 100%. You will still have the base crit chance of 5% though. Crits always deal the total crit damage amount, it just depends on the value roll from your weapons. Crit damage multiplier is calculated last after all damage increases. Damage will show your weapon's base damage plus all other added damage to attacks through gear or gems. Ailment chance, which ailment you apply depends on what your highest damaging element is. Rage on hit determines how much rage you gain when auto-attacking. One-handed melee weapons give 75 rage per hit as well when dual wielding. When using one pistol you also get 75, but when dual wielding pistols you gain 60. Two-handed sword and axe give 180 per hit, warhammer 270, and staff will give 120 willpower per hit. Survivability. Health depends on your toughness, flat health from gear, times increased maximum health. Health regeneration depends on your ferocity, times gear and passive increases to health regen. This is the amount you will heal each tick. The frequency is depending on health regen rate reduction. You can get that on gear and from passive. Base is 1.0. Life Leech can be rolled on weapons and catalyst. It's separated in attack and spell leech. Global Life Leech give you both. Life Leech will be applied once the health regeneration ticks. Force Shield is depleted before health with the exception of damage over time. Passive node in the Warlock tree called Faith Leech will apply any Life Leech to your Force Shield first. And the node Resilience to Corruption will make it so damage over time is applied to your Force Shield first. Force Shield regeneration is the amount recovered per second. Force Shield regeneration delay is the time it takes for Force Shield to start regenerating after taking damage. Can be reduced with Force Shield regeneration delay reduction. Block chance. Our base value is 0.0. If we gain block chance, then our block efficiency becomes 15% base. Block efficiency is the damage reduction you get when you block. Block chance is additive and gets added 1 to 1. And block efficiency is a percentage increase of your shield's block efficiency or your base 15%. Meaning if your shield has 25% and you get 20% increased block efficiency from your passive, you will have a total amount of 30%. Presence currently not in the game, not affected by anything. Dodge chance value depending on your dodge chance score. And movement speed is increased by +% move speed. Resistance types: material with physical, toxic, rend, elemental, fire, frost and lightning, and occult with ether, sacred and shadow. These are increased by the respective affixes: elemental, material and occult. The damage reduction percent is depending on your resistance score. Status ailments. Maximum ailment stacks determines how many stacks you can apply in total. This can be increased through passive nodes in the Kabbalist tree. Base amount of stacks applied is 1, which can also be increased through passive nodes like Insidious, Decay and Gear. This will add to your base amount. Passive node Power of the First Man will double those stacks. For example, base 1 stack plus 2 from passives plus 2 from gear equals 5. Times 2 from Power of the First Man equals 10 stacks applied per proc. Which ailment you apply is determined by the highest damage type. With the passive node Grievous Afflictions, you will apply ailments from the 2 highest damage types. The skill tab will tell you which ailments are applied, but the stacks are not accurate. If you increase stacks applied per proc, it will not show up here. For example, if you deal toxic damage, you will apply poison. The ailment damage is affected by the damage range. Increasing your overall damage will increase ailment damage. This number in the tooltip will actually not change, no matter if you increase your overall damage or if you have increased ailment damage. This will always show the base value. So for example, if we add our buff from Winter's Grasp, we gain additional frost damage, which will actually buff our poison damage on the poison ticks, because of the increased overall damage. Same goes for rings and anything that adds damage to this, even like helmets and armor that give us increased damage per rage. This will increase our poison ticks. Converting any type of damage into more toxic damage or, for example, more rend damage will not increase the damage from poison. If we have the same weapon damage number and just convert some physical into toxic, It will not increase the poison damage. The rate will determine how fast it will tick, and the duration will determine how often it ticks. All that applies to any other ailment that deals damage. The other damaging ailments are bleed, burn, and shock. Freeze does not benefit from anything except ailment duration. Stasis slows your enemies. It depends on how many stacks you apply. It also can benefit from duration. Weakness is also only affected by stacks and duration. Weakness stacks make enemies take more damage and deal less damage to you. Curse will transfer any ailment stacks to other enemies around. The efficiency determines how many stacks it transfers. Cursed radius tells you the area where it spreads. Cursed propagation tells you the amount of stacks transferred. This can be increased with stacks applied. Duration same as others. Stun is currently not in the game. I've tested this with pure physical. I cannot apply stun. To summarize, the highest damage type will determine which ailment you apply. Toxic for poison, rend for bleed, fire for burn, frost for freeze, lightning for shock, ether for stasis, sacred for weakness, and shadow for curse. Damaging ailments are affected by your total damage. The higher this number, the higher the ailment damage. It also does not matter if it's from a different type, as long as the highest value is from the ailment you want to apply. The ailment damage is also affected by ailment damage increases, but it does not show up anywhere in the tool tips. Then the number of stacks you apply will increase the damage incrementally. Resource pool shows your maximum resources from reach and willpower. This states willpower on hit, which is currently false. This is your willpower regen. Rage conversion shows the time before a willpower regen kicks in after gaining rage. This is determined through your weapon. Stamina shows maximum stamina, highest possible is 7. If you look at your rage bar, above are 4 green dots. This is your stamina. There are another 3 ones grayed out next to it. The only way to unlock them currently that I know of are these boots, Freight Combat Cleats, and the passive node Slippery in the Sentinel tree. Stamina regen shows the time needed to regain stamina points, can be decreased with stamina regen rate reduction. Miscellaneous, all but Magic Find is pretty self-explanatory. Experience shows your current XP. It's also shown at the bottom of the screen. This bar will fill up. If you mouse over it, the second number is the XP needed for a level up. Health Globe Pickup Radius does exactly what you think it does, shows you the range at which you pick it up. Gold Pickup, currently nothing in the game that affects this. And Magic Find, I don't have any proof that this does anything, more testing to be done. I've done 2 hours of farming low veteran with no Magic Find. And I've gotten 20 legendaries and 5 uniques, and 2 hours of farming champion 9 with the highest magic find possible, and I found 5 legendaries and no unique. So quantity over quality seems to be the way to go for farming. The more you kill, the more you get, no matter the level. Items. The buffs gained from Winter Scraps, Thunderstrike, Consuming Ember, and the different residual energy buffs from gear and passives are not affected by percentage damage increases. They only affect our base gain from weapon and flat damage increases like gems and accessories. The buffs then take a percent from that base damage and add it on top. For example, when we buff ourselves, we deal mostly elemental damage, but if you swap out gear with increased elemental damage instead of material, we actually lose damage. Because it only affects our base, and our base has more material damage than elemental. This applies to my gear though. If you have a lot of flat elemental damage added from your gear, elemental increase will be better. So if you use a catalyst to proc all these buffs, the most important stats will be flat damage added, crit damage multi, and after that percentage damage increases. The perfect rolls for weapons are 3 flat damage, crit damage, and 3 sockets. Accessories, 3 flat damage, crit damage, and 1 socket. The residual energy buff from accessories will only proc once, so only 1 ring with that buff is needed. Gloves with increased damage and primary attribute. Helmet and chest with primary attribute and manic slaughter buff. Maximum roll on that is 9% per unspent. Boots with primary attribute, as well as pants. Skills. There are 4 groups of skills. skills usable with melee weapons, ones usable with dagger, pistols or bows, skills only usable with pistols or bows, and skills usable with staffs or catalysts. Most skills are affected in their animation or DPS, with increased attack and spellcast speed, which are the following. Anvil's bow has faster attacks, also has increased charge speed if you use the skill modifier Will to crush. Avenger Auto Turret only has increased turning speed when used with autonomous sensors. DPS is not affected from attack speed. Bleeding Edge only animation is affected, not rotation of blades. Consuming Ember, fast animation, as well as Havoc Orb and Phantom Blades. Slayer's Flurry has a faster startup and higher ticks on the channel. Stings of Quarian as well, faster animation, as well as Thunderstrike and Tracker's Reach. Wings of Ishmir gets increased flight speed, and last Breath of Beopath gains faster animations. All other skills do not benefit from attack or spellcast speed. The buffs we get from Winter's Grasp, Thunderstrike and Consuming Embers are 10% from your attack damage or spell damage and are added on top for either attacks or spells and do not stack with each other. Attacks skills scale your total damage and spells have an added base damage. The skill modifier Order Through Chaos is currently bugged on Gunslinger's Brand. This will apply the entire damage buff if you only shoot once. This buff is also multiplicative, so it makes for the highest crits in the game. If you have any other questions on skills, let me know in the comments. Passives. There are no multiplicative increases on this tree, everything is additive. Apparently persistence hunting is multiplicative, but I tested it and I cannot confirm that. Either it is bugged to me or I'm doing something wrong, but if this would be multiplicative I would go up to 100k crits. The 3 highest damage increases you can get currently are residual energy from the Warlock tree, takes 30% from your total attack damage after all damage increases and adds it on top. It also affected by crit damage, which makes this the most powerful passive node in the game. When I first read this, I always thought it scales with your spell damage, but it actually scales with your total damage. Second best in the Assassin's tree, Merciless Lethality. Because the -% damage takes 30% from your flat damage, subtracts that from your total damage and multiplies that with an additional 60% crit damage. Let's say we have a base damage of 100 and a damage increase of 600%, it makes a total of 700. We take off 30 from that, which is 670 times 1.6 equals 1072, which is a huge damage increase. Obviously that is calculated with a 100% crit chance, but even with 50% it's still a massive amount. The third best, Save from Afar in the Ranger tree. Only if you cannot make use of it though, because it scales with projectiles. Honorable mentions Duty to Exterminate in the Warlock tree, comboing with Manic Slaughter and the Chest and Helmet. Every crit damage node, I always pick these up in any build because that multiplies your total damage including any buffs. We have 5 in the Soldier tree over here and 2 in the Praetorian. As a side note, attack damage increases any flat damage added to attack skills including elemental and occult damage, as well as projectile damage if the skill shoots projectiles. For example, turrets benefit from attacks or melee weapon damage and projectile damage. The worst nodes in the game are Retaliator in the Praetorium tree, because this is minus 50% on your actual crit chance, not your score. Which means the game will calculate your crit chance from your score and then half that. It also stacks with the unique Legacy of the Willbreaker, which means you will end up with minus 100% crit chance. However, you retain your 5% base crit chance. I did do a tank build with this, but as you could see I hardly dealt any damage. Crit is the way to go if you want high damage numbers. And the other really bad node is Gods Amongst Men in the Warmonger tree. I cannot find any use for this node in any build since I gain so much non-material flat damage from accessories and weapons, plus gems on that weapon. We still have to do some research on ailment and the capitalist tree. I'm sure the ailment builds are viable, but I don't know if I can push it as high as the turret and mage builds. Before I do that though, I want to finally upload my Gunslinger's Brand build. But yeah, this does it for the advanced walkthrough on all the math behind the game. I hope you enjoyed. Leave a like if you do. I'm sorry for the delay, but this was a lot of work. Also hope I earned your subscriptions. Like I said, I will be back with my Gunslingers brand and ailment build in the future. I'm currently live on Twitch right as this video goes up, so if you have any other questions, feel free to ask over there or on our Discord. Until next time, servus YouTube.